Ready? All right, Ms. Davis, first of all, I want to begin by thanking you for taking time out of your schedule to work with me and so forth. We've gotten together, we've set our goals, learning targets, and created a pre-assessment. So now I want to move on to the next phase of the coaching cycle, which is going to be the planning process. So with that said, we need to start off with our learning target. So now that you've done your pre-assessment and you looked at your data, what does your data tell you that our next move should be in selecting a learning target for this lesson?
I think the goal I want to start off with is performing operations using fractions and mixed numbers.
Okay. And if I go back to our standards or our targets, that's going to be our very first one. Okay. So if you was to take that particular standard and put it in an I can statement, what would that be?
I can perform operations using fractions and mixed numbers using fractions and real-world problems.
You sure about that?
No.
Okay. I can just put it in an I can statement.
I can perform operations using fractions and mixed numbers to solve real-world problems.
Thank you. So let's change that to solve. Okay, how will students demonstrate their learning?
Through observations, quick checks, quizzes, working in small groups.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. So, if your scholars are doing these things that you just finished talking about, the learning observations, the quizzes, the working in small groups, talk to me. How will you know if they're doing well? So if they're doing well, they're going to be able to, what are some of the residue or some of the signs you're going to see?
They'll be able to show their work for their problems, explain their thinking, teach a friend.
Okay. Let's spend a moment talking about instructional practices. What resources will you need?
Manipulatives for small group instruction like fraction strips.
Now you mentioned fraction strips. Will they be using fraction tiles or will they be creating their own, or which one do you find most beneficial?
I think creating their own, but I think that's also time consuming. So I saw like where it was like blank, they just have to cut it out and maybe color them in or something.
Okay.
So I don't know how I can implement that.
Okay.
Without it being just a colored assignment.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking if the hands-on aspect of it, would that provide something more concrete that'll stick with them as opposed to just taking a pre-made thing that, help with the understanding. So I kind of guess you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons or see if you can find a way where you can make it not so time consuming. Okay. What other resources?
I think real world application that I can put into my math centers using fractions.
Talk to me about some of those centers with the real world. Give me an example of one of the activities that you could put into a center that's going to go tie right back into our goal.
I want to do something with recipes, and maybe with the adding aspect. So they want to add all the measurements together to see how much total they need of an item, or with subtraction, say they wanted to take some of the items away to make a smaller portion, maybe. With multiplication, maybe they need to make more of it, so they need to multiply the amount versus the serving. And then dividing, maybe just being able to take the total and maybe separate it into groups.
So what I hear you saying is that you want to, in order to make these things more relevant and more applicable for the students, you're going to bring in recipes and you're going to have them basically play around with ingredients where they adding, subtraction, multiplying, dividing. So they're going to use those 4 operations that we talked earlier about as far as with the multiplying fractions. Okay. Any other materials that you need?
I need to find some recipes.
Don't look at me, I can't help you in the cooking department. Okay, find recipes.
I got the fraction strips that we talked about. Maybe construction paper if we decide to make the fraction strips.
Okay. Markers.
And dry erase markers too if they're gonna be showing on their little white slates.
Okay. So you need the markers and slates. Okay. What will students be asked to do that's going to support student proficiency?
So is this like maybe assignments or?
What will they be asked to do?
The practice problems that I saw on USA Test Prep that I could turn into little quick checks for them.
Okay. So you're going to have your students do practice problems. Anything else?
Support student proficiency. We could use the Kagan strategy. Is it Rally Coach?
Okay. So would that mean we would have to model the Rally Coach approach, or have they already been introduced to it through?
It wouldn't hurt to remodel it.
Okay. They've
been introduced, but it wasn't introduced where we've practiced it, so it wouldn't hurt to model it again.
Okay. Now, what activities are likely to have the most impact on your students' understanding and provide necessary support throughout the learning process?
I think those fraction strips, because they'll be able to see the equivalent fractions, they'll be able to understand how fractions relate back to the whole, and it's a visual that we can continuously go back to when we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing.
Okay. Now I want you to just stop, take a moment to think. So you got your thinking cap on, and I kind of want you to forecast. Tell me about some of the misconceptions or other areas in which you feel your students will need additional scaffolding for.
When adding with unlike denominators, I can see a lot of them just adding straight across.
Okay.
So going over how to do the steps for adding with unlike denominators, we might need to review factors and multiples.
Okay. What about decomposing fractions?
That too.
Okay. Have you checked out the pacing guide so far?
I looked at it briefly.
Okay.
So for how long we have on this unit, I want to say it said 36 days.
Okay. And the first part with this lesson right here, where we're dealing with the same denominator, how much time do you think that's going to take?
Oh, just 1 day.
Thank you. I think, let's see how much time did they give in a thing. I think they might have gave 1 to 2 days, but I agree with you. I don't think they need that additional time.
I think a lot of them are already familiar from last year with it.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Okay, so we can knock that off in 1 day. Okay. What evidence will we collect to figure out if the students are getting a point?
Exit slips. quizzes over each skill.
Will there be any formal observations?
Like me taking time and going around the room and looking at them as stations. Yeah.
Okay. I noticed you mentioned stations as well as slates. What about when you're working with your guided groups?
That'd be another opportunity to observe whether or not they're getting it.
Okay. Will you be having any anecdotal notes? Okay.
We were doing the student, what was it called? Naming and
Come on. Naming and
noticing. Okay. Naming and noticing.
I appreciate you even remembering that, so that's pretty good. All right. What about student journals?
Yeah, looking at their My Thinking section, which they'll be using in some of their stations.
Okay. Now, last time when we co-taught, we spent time doing what you just said, the naming and noticing. We also did teaching in tandem, where we went back and forth while you were teaching. And we did the pick four, which is what you did, but you didn't realize it, where you assigned me a group of students to work with. So with that being said, as we go forth, how would you like to structure this next lesson?
I think we should do what we've been doing, the teaching in tandem.
Okay. So we're going to continue. Okay. What do you still feel about naming and noticing?
I think that was helpful when we were going back and discussing what we saw throughout the lesson.
Okay. Did you still want to stick with the pick four? Okay. Will it be the same group, or should we first look at this data and move from there?
Yeah.
Okay. That way it can remain fluid if those four are ready to move on. Who will do what?
Well, I guess I'll be planning the lesson. What do you mean, like who will do what?
When we going forth in this lesson and we're coming together, you know, you want me to do a pick four. We talked about naming and noticing. So when we plan, do you have a specific task or a way in which I can be most helpful or most assistance to you?
Well, I guess just going over the lesson plan together and determining if the structure of the lesson plan is good enough. Maybe giving me different ideas of how to do guided practice.
Okay. What about center?
Center ideas as well.
Okay. And in the center activities, will they have task cards?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know you're going to be out sometime this week, so would you be in agreement if we start this lesson on Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just keep in mind that I won't be able to come back that Thursday or Friday, but I will be back the following Monday. So in the meantime, you have a day on which you're going to begin that lesson, and I want to admonish you to just keep your logs and your little name and noticing and any student data that you have track of, and we will get back together and pick it up from there.
Okay.
All right, and as once again, I thank you for taking time out of your schedule, and we'll continue on.